I used to be like, why do I have to learn Vietnamese? I'm in Finland, we'll never use it. Now, of course, my mom said one day you'll thank me. And I am so thankful because now I speak it fluently.
Vietnamese women are the strongest, most badass people you have ever met in your life. You do not mess with Vietnamese women at all.
The thing that I feel like Vietnam does is that it pulls in a pool of people who are very different and would never otherwise probably get along or hang in the same circles. But somehow you build this super strong bond with each other because you're all in the same boat.
Welcome to a Vietnam podcast with me, your host, Neil Mackay. I came to Vietnam for a holiday in 2015 and instantly fell in love with the place. So decided to come back. Was only going to be here for 6 weeks, and that's now turned into 8.5, nearly 9 years, going on a decade and no plans to leave. Like many expats, I came here and just absolutely fell in love with the place. I started a podcast in 2019. It was initially called a Saigon podcast and eventually became a Vietnam podcast. And from then I started my own podcast production business called 7 Million Bikes Podcast. This country is something about it that just gets its hooks into you and makes you want to stay here. And I wanted to share stories of people connected to Vietnam because there's so many interesting people, not just here in the country, around the world, who all have stories to share about Vietnam. And my guest today is one of them. I was going to say unique, but you may be unique. I've not met many people with the same background. They're half Swedish, half Vietnamese, brought up in Finland, and fluent in all 4 languages. And I had to count them. So I was like, so that's English, Vietnamese, Finnish, and Swedish. And I don't know if she knows this, but she sounds like she's from Boston a little bit sometimes due to her partner. So she's got a little bit of a Boston twang that you might hear as well. And you're like, that doesn't sound Finnish, but that's where that comes from. And, she has an interesting viewpoint because she's seen as Asian in the Western world and then seen as white here in the Asian world as well. So she can see the cultural viewpoints and the cultural differences from 2 different angles. And today we're going to be talking about those different angles of the Asian versus Western viewpoints on subjects that are come up a lot here in the expat groups that a lot of people are interested in. And that's on dating, marriage, and the treatment of animals as well in Vietnam. So my guest today, I'm really excited to talk to, is Linda Beck.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on. So tell me a bit about then your upbringing in Finland, Sweden. Where was it? What was that like being the Asian person?
So my father is of Swedish heritage. We grew up in Finland. And my mother is Vietnamese. She from the north. Again, I was born in a very rural area up in the northern part of Finland. Farmland. We had sheep, we had pigs, we had chickens, cows. Yeah, being part of me goes like, I wasn't aware I was different. I grew up, again, everyone's blonde hair, blue eyed. I think part of me, I wasn't self-aware enough. I was too young to be aware of the fact that I was different. Obviously, going into school is when it starts, with the bullying and the name calling, and any teenage girl wants to fit in with their friends. So I remember really, really trying to be white, Western, blonde, really wanting to be blonde with blue eyes.
Did you ever dye your hair blonde?
Yes, I know. My mom, I had those chunky stripes that us millennials had. And yeah, we have self-tanner and really, really tried to. But obviously, it was very, very different from them. It's only something now, I think, I was very fortunate to be different, But of course, growing up, it was very hard because learning Vietnamese, for example. So growing up, my mother started speaking to me in Vietnamese before I started speaking. So the moment I started speaking Vietnamese straight away. And I was a very old lady as a child. I loved to walk around picking apples, singing old, my mom taught me Vietnamese songs. Songs that very old generation music, if you could say so. I would walk around singing. We have actually our own VHS. I really wish I should have prepared that and showed you. But yes, I started speaking Vietnamese. I speak Swedish with my dad. I spoke English. I spoke Finnish. I was very, very fortunate. But of course, growing up over there, I always was like, why? My mom bought books from Vietnam. And every day after school, I'd sit for 2 hours and write and read. And I remember I hated it. And we had to go to school too, on Saturdays, Vietnamese classes. used to hate that. Because even within the Vietnamese community in Finland, I was different because I was Northern. I am Northern, and they're all Southern. So not only was I bullied in school for being Asian, I was bullied in Vietnamese class for being a Northerner and being half. But yeah, I used to be like, why do I have to learn Vietnamese? I'm in Finland, we'll never use it. Now, of course, my mom said one day you will thank me, and I am so thankful because now I speak it fluently with a very heavy Northern accent, heavier than my mother. I don't know where I got it from. Same with my English. I don't know why I have a Boston accent. I have a very tough, like Northern accent, and I write and I read. So yeah, I came to use here, but of course, as a child, I never thought I was gonna ever have to use it.
So how did your mum end up in Sweden?
So she left Vietnam as a refugee. Her story is that's another one actually for another day. But that's a very interesting story. I've always told her she should write a book about it, about being 10 years in camp, and that's how my mom and my dad met.
Whereabouts was the camp?
In China. So she was his translator. He was there with the Amnesty International and everything to check out like the conditions of the camps and everything. And yeah, and then she came to Finland. 2 years later, I appeared. And then 23 months after that, my brother appeared. But yeah, like her stories, she's actually one person I admire so much because of, it's another thing I think for us, Asian or half Asian, whatever, when we go to the West and we don't understand the struggles our parents had to do to basically bring us to the West. So a lot of them go, why are you going back to what we fled from? So yeah, no, her story is amazing. I admire the strength in that woman, fighting for 10 years, for freedom, and coming to Vietnam, coming to a completely new country where she knew no one, not a lick of Finnish or Swedish or anything. But yeah, that's why I think the way she brought me up was like she tried to give me everything she never had. She always said that language is like the one big gift a parent can give their children is the gift of language. So early on, I was forced to learn a lot. I think she speaks Cantonese, tried to make me learn Cantonese, but I think my brain could only hold so many languages before I started forgetting. Because even now, right now, like Swedish is my native language, I rarely speak it. So I'm starting to forget, which is insane that you forget your native language. And of course, it will take me an hour to pick it up again, but I find myself texting my friends back home and I have to Google words because I'm like, what's the word for it? And I have to use English words. Or even I say certain words and they go like, my friends literally go to me, you sound like you just came to Finland. Like you sound really like your Swedish is broken, which is horrible. But I do make an effort here to try and be around Finnish people, Swedish people. And that's another thing.
Are there many of them here?
No. I think a lot of them are so much older than me. And I'm sure there is like a community that I don't know of, but I really, really try. And it's another thing living over there. I never appreciate anything about Finland and Sweden. Now I'm hungry for it,
Yeah.
Like our entire fridge is filled with like
Are you missing IKEA? You're like, I want some Swedish meatballs. I want some IKEA meatballs.
Yeah, I start craving food like I ate in school. Those lunches we had in school that were like, that's disgusting. Now I crave it. Like Steven, my boyfriend, always goes like it's like a poor man's something, but I'm like, that the cheaper the better. And I find myself cooking that now. So my mom will send me and people will smuggle in food for me here. We have reindeer and like horse salami and it's amazing.
It's interesting you kind of forget your language, and we've heard this before. But even for me, so I speak English, but I speak Scottish. But even just yesterday, I was with somebody and they were like, but I've been to Glasgow, I can understand you. And I was like, yeah, I know, I've learned to speak slowly and properly. But if I go back to Glasgow, I can talk that right away and I'll be like, okay, when you know what you're going to do in the pub tonight? Like it will come back and I don't even mean it. Like every sentence starts with I. You going out to the pub tonight? Aye. What are you doing tonight? You want to go to the pub? Aye. Yeah. Everything ends in I. And that's not even another language, but it almost is another language.
I think they call it code switching.
Oh, really?
It's code switching.
Right.
So it's the same as, for example, I do it, which is insane, and my boyfriend hates it. But if I'm with someone from England, it would normally start going more and more English. And I'm someone from Australia, it starts going more and more Australian. And again, American, because I'm with him all the time. So then I start sounding like from Boston.
You were just saying Boston.
Boston. So yeah, but it's called code switching.
Right.
It's the same. So you pick up other people's mannerisms, which is another thing when it comes to like me speaking so many people ask me like, how is it possible? And I actually don't know.
Yeah.
If someone told me now to learn 4 languages, I'd be like, no, I can't do it.
No, you've got to do it from birth, right?
Yeah,
For most people.
and again, it's mannerism, because like when I speak Swedish, I'm very different.
I've heard this, that the way, like, what language you speak can change everything. Like you're saying, your mannerisms, the way you project yourself, like you kind of like slip into that culture.
So it's I don't know if you've been around Swedish people.
Not
so
really.
and
One or two.
so I did this for a long time, and I never knew I did until my boyfriend brought it up. So we do this thing in Finland and Sweden when we agree. We say,
Oh, really?
yeah, and I never knew I did that. So he was like, "Are you okay?" And I do that when I'm around other Swedish people,
Yeah.
and I start picking. I'm like, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I never knew I did that. And that's a form of code switching, I was thinking. And again, like in Swedish, it's more of a la 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 language. So my voice changes and my mannerism changes. And Finnish is a more choppy and aggressive language. So again, it sounds very aggressive. But then in Vietnamese, and with a northern Haiphong accent, it's very aggressive. So yeah, I think it's called code switching. So it's when you pick up other people's mannerisms. Like I've never been to Scotland, but I bet if you and me sit here for long enough, I'm gonna start being I'm born and bred.
There you go. There you go. Now, your mum's story, I'm sure, is fascinating. We've shared a lot of those stories on this podcast. If anyone wants to go back and look through some of the episodes, it's just such bravery, such courage. It's just incredible. And it always, when I started to learn more about these stories, it really brings you back to today when there's people trying to get into the UK by boat or Australia or trying to cross the border in America. And obviously, refugees and asylum seekers, they just get so much, they get really short end of the stick. And then you hear these stories about Vietnamese people. I heard stories about, there was one woman, she fled from like District 4 on April 30th, 1975. She was 5 years old with her family. Zuni and Win, go back and check out the episode. And they were on a boat for days and they were rejected by like Hong Kong. They were told they couldn't come in. And then eventually the captain of the boat that had picked them up in the middle of the ocean was like, I'm bringing them in. So you hear these incredible, incredible stories, and it does make you think about these people that are trying to seek asylum today. They're just looking for safety.
The thing for me, again, growing up being, in some sense, very privileged, being able to be born in a country and never having to go. And my mom would always go like, "Oh, you don't even know." I was like, "You can't hold that above my head. I am sorry I was born into this."
Did you get that guilt trip?
She was
you don't know what I've been through?
You are so lucky. I mean, even as a child, she would bring me to Vietnam and show me orphanages and be like, "Do you know how lucky you are?" And I'm like, you can't blackmail me like that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry I was born.
Yeah. This is your fault.
Yeah, no, I didn't ask for this. But I've read many stories of many. My mom used to have this subscription of this newspaper, basically, for all Vietnamese people all over the world, and they tell their stories, and she would read them for me. And an amazing thing my mom said is, no one puts their child in open water unless that is safer than land. And then again, and then for me, I go like, but again, you cannot understand. My mom was like, you do not understand when someone, they will hand their child. She said, like the boat refugees, for example, they know they can't get on the boat, but they will hand their children to a stranger because that is more safe than what they are going through, which is insane to, and or you see the ones that get into the lorries to the UK, they know it's dangerous, but there's no other way, So I think that's, again, we're very fortunate to be born into the situations we were born into. And I've always said, like, I will never say I can understand, but I can try and sympathize with it. And I think my mom used to go like, hardships build character. She used to say that with a lot of things. I would like stuff sandwiches into a VHS player, and then I got, and she was like, it builds character though. Because I think I was also born into an age where, in the 90s, where, I won't say capital punishment, but
corporal punishment.
Corporal punishment.
No, capital punishment. That's very different. I was like, wait, what? They're killing you?
That would be a different kind of a podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, and she was saying it builds character. I'm like, there's like disciplining and then there's beating. But yeah, so I think we're very fortunate to be born into a certain like time, I would say, and situation. And then I know people here, Vietnamese people, go to me, why are you leaving the country we all try to go to?
Well, this was going to be my next question. So it's something I've heard a lot on this podcast, is when VQ people, Vietnamese first generation, second generation, I always get this confused. But people like yourself who've come back, their parents cannot understand it because they left a completely different country and they're saying, why are you going back? So why did you come back to Vietnam?
I think so. As a child, my mom again was very hard on me keeping to my heritage, my roots. Again, as a child, my mom, her favorite thing to do was bring me here, dress me up in a little ao yai, and like have me go to the temple and pray. And we're Christians, but she was, because I was also brought up Buddhist and Christian, but she was like, again, builds character. You need to know how to do it. So she always brought me back. I think every 2 years, every summer, we'll come back here. So I had a very deep connection to Vietnam. I think as a child, I was always told that being half, speaking fluently all languages, there's more opportunity in this country for me, because again, she was like, you stand out here more, being so fluent in reading and writing and everything, and not just that, but also mannerisms and culture. Because I might be this little girl who was grown up in a little Swedish school, but I'm very Vietnamese. I am very Vietnamese.
What makes you very Vietnamese?
I
You
think
can sing karaoke.
no, I can't sing that now.
Oh, you're not a
I am
Vietnamese then.
tone deaf.
Oh no, you don't need being tone deaf helps you sing karaoke in Vietnam.
I love singing. No one else likes me singing, though. I've tried to.
Perfect for karaoke in Vietnam then.
But yeah, so I think I really I mean, I didn't plan. Everyone's story is the same. You didn't plan to come, and now it's 10 years later. I came for 3 months. I'm like, I come,
So you just came for like a vacation?
Yeah, and then I stayed. And I think there's a saying here, if you stay after a couple years, you're going to end up living here. And I genuinely think being so used to, because when I first came here, the city I'm from has 200,000 people. And we used to go to a capital, Helsinki, and I was like, that's the big city.
Yeah, right.
We don't have what's it called, skyscrapers or anything, but that was the big city for me. And I came to Vietnam, it was culture shock. One, in the size and the amount of people and the density of people, because I was a very typical Finn, as in like personal space. You don't talk to strangers, you don't look at people. If I get into a bus, I'd rather stand and sit next to another person. I'd rather stand in the rain than stand next to someone else. So I came here and everyone's very touchy, and I'm like, But I also think I could never go back now anymore, because now I'm so used to it. Now I'm the weird person when I go home, goes into hi to strangers.
You just skip the line and go straight to the
front.
front.
Oh no, I haven't become that Vietnamese yet. But again, I was very used to manners. Manners. I always used to be like manners. You get into an elevator, you wait for people to come out before you go in. And cut people in line. And again, I'm also a very, very Scandinavian, isn't it? I don't really say anything. I'm the kind of person who, if I get hit by a truck, I'll go and apologize.
Is that a Scandinavian trait?
It's very like, I'm sorry I'm existing. And I never say anything. We go to restaurants. My boyfriend's very like, if you don't like it, you say, I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm crying. It's fine. I love it. But I'm very like that. I think now I've become more and more, and I think that's something I picked up from him. Being like, if you stand up for yourself, because I can't stand up for myself at all. But yeah, that was something else I had to be very used to, like coming here and again, just the sheer amount of people. And now going back to Finland, where everything closed after a certain time. It's dark 10 months of the year. I love it though. It's a nice reboot in your head. Everything works. The bus comes on time. Everything works, If it says it's delivered by 7, it's 6:59, it's there, I think that's shocking to me when things actually work now. So it's like a reverse culture shock. And I don't think I could ever go back anymore. I love going back. I go back for my family. One big thing when you grow up is like, you think the ones you're always going to think your friends, you kind of drift apart. I have a couple that I still would go see. But I would go home. I would go home for again. I would like the Northern Lights, which is another thing.
Oh, that's on my to-do. My bucket list to see the Northern Lights.
I thought it was something normal. I'm like, it's Northern Lights,
Lucky, that's amazing.
Like, because we also like up in the north, like right by Lapland and everything, by the Arctic Circle, we have reindeers, and I was like, that's the most normal thing ever. So when I tell people I love reindeer meat, they're like, you're eating Rudolph? I'm like, Rudolph feels delicious.
Rudolph is delicious.
And we have, again, sauna culture, polar plunges. And for me, it was something so normal. So when I come here, and they go like, oh my God, Northern Lights. Like we polar plunge into the Northern Lights, we what's it called? Like we make a little hole in the ice and we jump down, and it's normal.
It's like that the world over though, right? So like where I lived in the suburbs of Glasgow, we have a mountain range behind our house. And then, but not as far north as you guys, but in the summer, the sun doesn't ever really set. It's like it's like daylight till midnight. And I just grew up there. It wasn't different to me. And then it was when I first left and I went to America for the summer, and I was coming back one day and I was on the bus pulling into a suburb, and it's just this beautiful mountain range behind our house. And I was like, it's absolutely stunning.
you
I
kind
never
of
really thought about that.
you kind of come back in with different eyes,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Like for me, for
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
I remember like again like the thought now because in the summer the sun doesn't go down for us at all. So it's constantly pink, and like you go to a bar and it's light, and you come out and it's still light, and you're very confused, And again, at night or in the winter, it doesn't come up at all, so it's just dark. Now I look at everything in a very different, very different eyes, and I'm like reindeer, like sledding and sauna. I'm actually never been a sauna person. As a Finn, I'm like I don't really like it. My skin's very sensitive, so I just go out and I just break out in hives. Because we also use like the birch, what's it called, whip that we whip each other with.
So I'm just watching a new Netflix show called Nobody Wants This. Have you seen it?
Mm.
And he's in the sauna and he uses something to
Is it
like
the one with
Adam Brody.
Oh yeah.
But that's, I think, the same thing. I'd never
I
really
haven't
seen
watched
it
it
before.
again. That's what my boyfriend's all into watching those shows, and I'm like,
But they use that, this
Yeah.
like birch thing. I think I'd never really seen it before.
yeah. I don't actually know what the benefit of it is. I mean, it's supposed to like exfoliate.
Oh, is
Right,
that what
yeah.
it is?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm back, and I think for my friends seeing me here, they think it's amazing that I live in the tropics. You just have coconuts everywhere. Because that was something for me.
Well, we
I'm
do
like,
have coconuts everywhere.
everywhere. And then when I explained to them, I'm like, yeah, it's just like we walk outside and just like hit a tree and a coconut comes down.
Well, not exactly like
Oh,
that,
no.
but
I
they
tell
sell them
them,
on every
yeah.
corner, right? They
There's
are
like
everywhere.
mangoes everywhere, and I think for them they go like that's your normal life. But again, I've been here for so long now that it's not special for me anymore. And part of me, I think after COVID, because that was when you like really woke up and go like, oh my god, like really appreciate things. So now I do walk outside. I'm like, it's amazing that I'm in a country where there's coconuts everywhere and papaya.
So being in Saigon, we've talked about you do have a unique, unique means one of a kind. It's maybe not one of a kind, but you have a viewpoint that not many people share, that you have this, you're seen as Asian in the West and you're seen as white here. So we've talked about some of these cultural differences and that you can see it from both sides. So we talked in the beginning, 3 main areas. We talked about dating, marriage, and the treatment of animals. So we talked about that way back in the beginning when we first started, about the challenge of dating in Vietnam for men and for women. And from having both of those viewpoints, what have you seen in that kind of way? Because it's also changed as well with apps now. When I first came here 8 years ago, I mean, obviously I've been married the whole time, so I've never used them, but 8 years ago, dating meant dating. I guess now it's completely different with apps and whatnot.
I think again, I'm like I'm really no one to speak about because I haven't been single for a long time. So, but again, I read like in all these like expat groups and everything for women, and it does seem like I think an influx in people, and again, without being very specific about what people say. But again, I think a lot of people come here, and the dating pool is very hard because again, so many people come here temporarily, And there's this saying here where they go like, well, the men that do come here, they're not going to go after another Western girl; they're going to go after an Asian girl. And again, I think when they come, anyone that comes to a new place, they think, oh, it's like a new place, new me, So I think that's why. And then again, with dating apps and it's like it is studied scientifically that in today's day and age, it's very hard to date and for people to stay in relationships because of the fact that there's social media everywhere. There's constant, like back in the 1800s, there was no Instagram for men to sit there,
Back in the 1800s, back in the 2000s, you don't need to go
I
back.
went a little
You don't
bit
need
to
to go back
extreme.
200 years. You only need to go back like 20 years.
But they said like there's no temptation or not, So I think in today's day and age, I mean, I had to import my boyfriend from another country because.
But so there is that stereotype, right? That men come here and they're only going to date Vietnamese women, or they're looking for Vietnamese women. And so it makes it difficult if you're a Western female coming here in Saigon, especially. And I think that's a really interesting point because you might come here and you think, I'm just going to be here for 3 months or 6 months or a year. Suddenly you've been here for 5 years, so you have to date, right? Like, you don't have to, but you probably want to date. And there is this stereotype that the men's dating pool is bigger because men are more attracted to Vietnamese women, whereas Western women aren't attracted to Vietnamese men so much. Why do you think that is?
I don't. I'm actually right like last night because I'm a very big sucker for Dr. Phil shows when I'm sleeping, and there was an episode about the exact reason when they say like the mail order brides and why you think that, and this was like an American guy who was very into Ukrainian women, and the viewpoint was that it's because they're submissive and they take care of their man, and he's like, oh, American women, all they want is this and this and this, and honestly, I'm like, you make that's what you make them, you know what I mean? Like again, and I think. I don't want to speak for other people, but my viewpoint, and this is only my opinion, people can fight me on this afterwards. But I think probably a lot of them, not everyone, but some think the same. Like it's the culture, because the culture of women here, at least back in the day, was again, it's very like serving. You take care of people. I mean, in my experience and what I've seen around here is, again, I think, yeah, you could language barrier, culture differences. Like, for some people it works. I think for many it doesn't because of that. Exactly. I think a lot of women, Vietnamese women, again, I can't speak for them, but I think they probably jump into it thinking more's going to happen. Exactly. They come here for 3 months and then they go, oh, I'm not taking you with me, because I've seen this exact same thing also, where again, they want something more and then yada, 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 back and forth. And then that doesn't happen.
I feel like recently I brought up the word stereotype a lot. We talk a lot about stereotypes, and sometimes they're true, and I think sometimes I bring it up because you can actually completely counter those stereotypes. So that stereotype you mentioned, I've heard this before, like Vietnamese women are submissive and they're appeasing, they're going to help, they're going to do whatever you say. I feel like that's probably a very old stereotype. The people I know who do have a Vietnamese partner, the women are not submissive. They are not like overly caring and affectionate and like, oh my God, I'll do anything for you. They're just lovely, normal people. So I don't believe in that one. Second of all, Vietnamese women are the strongest, most badass people you have ever met in your life. You do not mess with Vietnamese women at all. I've seen so many examples of that. Most of the companies that I've seen here are run by Vietnamese women. I was at an event just last week where it was the head of Standard Charter. She's a Vietnamese woman, first ever Vietnamese woman to be the CEO of a bank. You just meet so many incredible people. So this stereotype that Western guys come here to try and find some wife that's just going to do whatever they think, I think if those men exist, they're going to be in for a shock.
Yeah, so yeah, and that's what I said. So again, like Vietnamese women are like, I came here and I'm shocked that you go outside and there's women construction workers.
I
like,
know, right?
They work their ass off, and I'm like, that's amazing. And again, I've always had this joke. I was like, oh, if I was a guy, I would be way too scared to piss a Vietnamese woman off. And I'm like, oh, you're dead. You're dead. But yeah, that's why, again, I was like, the certain same stereotype. You make, if this is your view on someone, it's because you're making, when they go, oh, Western women will do this and this, and I'm like, yeah, well, maybe look at yourself. What's the common denominator here? You, it's not the women.
When we first came here, right, so 8 years ago, one of our friends, and I'm obviously not going to say any names, but he started getting into a relationship with a Vietnamese girl here. And they are now married with a child. She's super smart. She has like a degree, a master's, I don't know, PhD, works for her own company. Unbelievable woman, right? But when we were first here, there was another woman we knew who was an older Western woman. So she's probably had a bit of, experience being here for quite a long time and a different experience maybe from others. And I'll never forget this. She warned him. We were all out one night and she was like, you need to watch out for her. There's a term here called bag a foreigner. Vietnamese women just want to bag a foreigner, so you need to watch out for her. And their relationship almost nearly didn't take off because of that. And she warned him. She's like, no, all Vietnamese women, they all talk with each other. They just want to bag a foreigner. And again, I think that's maybe a stereotype from 10, 20 years ago that a Vietnamese woman would just want to get a foreigner because they have more money. But again, I don't think that's true anymore.
I think, and again, I'm like, those words, again, it's made about they say haters, and so they make it. And this is one of the most interesting things, like a phenomenon I found here, is when they post pictures of their boyfriend and then they hide the face. They put like a smiley face over the guy's face.
Over the boyfriend.
Yeah, because again, they go like they're so scared, and because it does happen. I'm sure it does. I remember when I first met my boyfriend, and everyone was like, "You're really flaunting him online." I'm like, "Well, go try. If you can take him from me, you can have him."
Why do they hide the boyfriend's face?
Because a lot of, especially girls that have like, again, I'm 32, but I'm not like that savvy in the new world. But I'm like, again, I think they're very scared that someone's gonna come and try and snatch, because it does happen. So there's been cases that I've read within
with
the
a big
Vietnamese,
net, like literally snatch the boyfriend.
and
steal him?
they'll like, what's it called, like bait him. They'll bait and try and steal him, or if it's someone with some fame, they'll do it just so that they can air out the fact that they did that, which is an amazing phenomenon.
It's another world to me.
Yeah. So for me, the people were like, "Oh, why you're like flaunting him and everything?" I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm not gonna put a smiley face over his face. Like, I have to be like, what's the
weird.
point?"
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So
the other stereotype, again, not stereotype, but we're talking about women come here and I don't doubt it's hard to date. I think it's hard to date around the world. I luckily been married, so don't have to do that. But just from watching TV shows like the one with Aziz Ansari, I'm forgetting the name right now off the top of my head, that was really insightful. And just pop culture, you can tell that dating is hard these days. But I know a lot of Western women here who've come and gone, who've met their partner here, like yourself, another Western person. It's not, I guess I'm just saying it's not impossible. It's
So,
being
so,
here.
so I think even within, and this goes for friends also, I think we are all here, even though we come from all over the world, right? From everywhere. And honestly, if it wasn't for this country, we would never ever meet because we're from such different, places. But what the thing that I feel like Vietnam does is that it pulls in a pool of people who are very different and would never otherwise probably get along or hang in the same circles. But somehow you build this super strong bond with each other because you're all in the same boat. You're all far away from each other. So the friendships you build now, one, because you're an adult and you're not just with your school friends anymore. You actually made a choice to become friends with these people. You just don't grow up with them.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. Like your school friends, you didn't really choose
Yeah, you
to be
couldn't have.
friends with
It's like
them.
you're all friends. You went to the same school and you live in the same neighborhood and your
Yeah,
parents know
yeah.
each other. But when you come here and you're pulled away from your
You
comfort
have to
zone,
make a choice to
so you actually, as an adult, making these choices to become friends. And I think an amazing thing that, especially for me, I'm like the friendships are built here are friendships that goes like, again, if we lived at home, this would never happen. We would never be friends probably because we're so different from different circles, different different hobbies, different But here we're all in the same boat, so it's not almost like we're forced into hanging with each other, but that's. So the same with relationships. I think the relationships back home, again, you're forced into this thing where you meet people that you would normally never ever ever meet. So I think also again, going through things, trauma bonding over living abroad. I think it really builds, a very deep connection. I've always said, like, with my boyfriend, I was like, I don't know. I mean, he's older than me, but also I was like, I don't think we would ever be, even if we went to school together, because he was a cool guy and I was a nerd. So that would never happen. But yeah, I do think, like, same with friendships. Like, the friendships you do build here, I do think they last forever.
Well, let's talk now about the treatment of animals. You've been involved in volunteering with Laws for Paws. You have dogs, multiple, same as me. I'm looking at Biscuit right now, who's trying to paw to go out, and it's like, Biscuit, you can't go out right now. I'm in the middle of a podcast. She looks so forlorn right now. She's like staring at the door. Like, she does this all day. She just goes out and then comes right back in. So I have to keep getting up to open the door and close the door.
The thing is, I think she knows we're talking about her, and she's really making herself real sad right now.
She absolutely
If there was
knows.
there could be like gray leaves falling down, sad music. She feels really bad for herself right now.
Yeah. Well, Biscuit, don't worry. I'll come let you out soon. But so treatment of animals here is a big issue. I think as a culture, Saigon, Vietnam is developing so quickly, and part of that is with pets. So before, and still to this day, I can see it, that dogs are chained up outside, or they're just left to run about the yard. Sometimes they're even just left in a cage, essentially. And they can be treated well, they're part of the family, but what I've noticed is animals, dogs especially, cats too, are becoming part of the family. Pets are becoming more part of the family, and that's been recognized more in like buildings like this. They're dog friendly. Not all buildings are dog friendly, but buildings like this, we get emails from the management, and they say it explicitly, like, we recognize that pets are part of your family now. There's some rules that you have to follow, which is completely normal. But at the end of the day, we are in a country that eats dogs and cats. And again, this is one of these, I hate using this word stereotype, but it's not a stereotype, but people will be like, oh, they eat dogs in Vietnam. I mean, yes, they do, but it's not like normal. It's not on every street corner. You have to go seek it out. I believe it's more common in the north, but I may be wrong on that. But what was your perspective as someone brought up by a Vietnamese mum, came to Vietnam a lot, and seeing that perspective from the Western and the Asian culture of their treatment of animals?
So I grew up with like both my mom and dad are massive animal lovers. My love for animals came from them. And again, like dogs, when I say like the obsession I have about animals in general, it's come to a point when my mom actually tells me, like, don't feed the dog with the same spoon in public because people go, and then you put it in your mouth. I'm like, well, it's my dog.
Oh, you feed your dog with the same spoon you eat
I would
from.
I would never do it to someone else's dog. It's like your child. I'm like, her spit's okay. But also the way I treat my animals, she goes like, people are gonna laugh at you at the way you treat your animal. Because I say, it's my baby, it's my child. And they go like, oh, it's not your child. I'm like, it is my child. But no, so I came here and I think it was very, very shocking. Like eating dog was like something that I couldn't even grasp the whole like eating dogs or cats. And something my mom said, she was like, and she's also very against it. She's hard practicing Buddhist. But she actually brought up to me, she was like, you can't bring your Western, like, what's it called? Like, mentality and then judge them for how they are. Because again, in India, you don't eat cow, and in Muslim countries, you don't eat pork. And so you can't just bring saying, because my mom said the same, oh, so you won't eat. And again, I just want to reiterate, she's very against eating dogs. But she said, but if you don't eat dog, why do you eat the other animal? What's the difference? And of course, I'm like, well, but she was like, no. Why do you discriminate against it? And it was very, very shocking to me. And I think for me, that's why I said I had to, after being here for 10 years now, I think it's not, it's a horrible thing that really needs to be stopped. And I think Vietnam are taking slowly, very small steps, but there are steps, towards trying to ban it. But with anything you ban, it's still going to happen. It's just now you can just try and control it more. And the one of the things that I've always thought about, like because I've done a lot of rescues, and honestly, one of the worst things is, and you have to grow very thick skin because you can't rescue them all, and one of the worst things I know is when you see the dogs you can't rescue and you know what their, like, what's it called, faith is, but you just have to grow it, like almost like turn the other way because there's nothing you can do to stop. You see all these trucks with like these cages behind, buying them from them, you're just supporting the trade. You need to be able to like try and convince them. And this is one thing I think I've always said, when I grow up and I become a millionaire, what I would love to do is, again, trying to put these people, because they do this because they don't have any other means of making money. So trying to find other things for them to do so that they can stop with this, because they're doing this because they need money. So I've always said, like, I would love to have a program where we actually, like, I wouldn't want to say educate, but try and like bring awareness to them. Like, do you understand? Like, and again, please stop doing this, and we'll help you get another job to do something else, And I've seen there's a lot of measures now that's taken into their closing meat restaurants. Inside Garden, I haven't seen, I never knew how to. And I actually told people I don't want to know the streets that the meat restaurants or anything on. If I do drive past it, please do not tell me, because I don't want to know the smell. And like, I'd rather, like, I want to be oblivious to it, because again, I am the someone who, again, comes home and thinks about it and catastrophizes in my head, and I obsess about it for months and I think about it. So I was like, rather just don't tell me. But I think for Vietnam, I think the view on pets, because again, I think a lot of them go, oh yeah, but the Pomeranian, that's my pet, but the street dog outside, that's okay to eat. I actually saw a picture or a video on TikTok about a girl who's holding her little chihuahua as she's ordering dog meat. And that was shocking. That blew my mind. Because again, I think for a lot of people, that's the pet, the poodle, that's a pet, the really pretty, but then the kind of like wonky dog outside with one eye, which is my favorite kind of dog. I'm like, the wonkier you look, the better, the cuter you are. You're like missing an ear, missing some patches, looking a bit mangy. I love it. But yeah, so that's what they don't consider. And I think I've said, if you are an animal lover, then you love all animals, me personally, I always go, like, I see the tiny dogs, and I'm like, they should not be wearing diapers and have their fur dyed. I'm like, they're not a doll, they're a dog. And again, that's it. Again, the chained out outside. But I always want to say, I'm like, we can't go and yell at people for them doing that, because that's how they grew up. That's all they know. The dog is kept as like a guard dog. They're not supposed to like come in the house or anything. As I said, a lot of people, when they see how I treat my dogs, they sleep in bed with us. They have their own pillow. We have a big Phu Quoc puppy who sleeps right here. And now I spoil her enough because I love it. I love her being my baby. So she sleeps under the covers on my arm, holding me. I have 2 dogs that do it on each side. And I love it. And they snore. My boyfriend snores, he can get out. They snore. It's amazing. It's the cutest little thing ever. But yeah. Oh yeah. Oh no, it's disgusting. I'm like, go away. But if the dog snores, it's the cutest little thing ever. But that's how I treat my dog. And I'm like, and I remember, like, even the woman that works for us, she said, like, she was shocked that when I was like, our dogs only drink Lovey water. So now that they go out and drink from the puddle, they're gonna get an upset stomach, which is insane when they think those dogs are eating carcasses outside, but my dogs are getting an upset stomach because I changed her kibble. Yeah. I always said, I'm like, back in the day you used to fight for your living, and now you're like, oh, I got diarrhea because I'm not eating Royal Canine. It's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Biscuit has a similar life. She only drinks the filtered water that we drink from the bottle, not from the tap. I remember years and years ago, actually just not long after we'd first arrived, this guy had this big, beautiful husky. And so someone at the party was just trying to be nice. They went to give the dog some water, and he was so rude about it. He was like, where's that water from? And she's like, oh, God, it's just from the tap. And he's like, would you drink it? And she's like, oh, no. And he's like, well, my dog doesn't drink it either. And I was like, all right, chill out. She's just trying to help. And your dog is not probably going to get sick by having a couple of drinks of tap water.
So this is another thing. They say the same thing. You don't go and you don't like mother another person's child. Because I tend to do this, and my boyfriend goes like, "Don't tell them how to do it." I'm like, "You shouldn't be doing that to your dog," But unless it's something they see, like, oh, they're giving them chicken bones or something, like, okay. But I tend to also do that. I'm like, I don't think you should do that. We have a massive thing with when you're walking your dog, for example. It's the same. There's like manners you have, like certain things you have to follow. You don't walk up and grab someone's dog and, It's like a child. You don't walk up to a random child and pick them up and kiss them. So that's a massive ick I have with people when they go, oh, they're kissing my dog, and I'm like, don't kiss her on the mouth like that. She didn't consent to that. But that, yeah, like, again, I think if someone were to give my dog tap water, I wouldn't say anything because, of course, I'd be like, it's okay. I'll just deal with it afterwards when I have to be outside the entire day. But no, I think even in Vietnam, when it comes to like me, when I walk around and I see how people do treat their dogs, I do try to say something. But again, I can't judge them on how they treat their dogs, Like they have them in cages with like, the bottom is just like there's no bottom to it. So they're just sitting there and sticking, But then I keep on thinking, oh, they're on a short leash and they only eat rice from their little bowl. But then I think, even if I were to rescue this dog, that dog's not going to be happy. That dog wants to be there with these people. They don't care. Like they say, the dog doesn't judge if you're rich or poor. That dog, like, I can rescue and give that dog the best life ever. But that dog's not, that dog just wants to be with them. So that's another thing I had to put into my head. I'm like, if it's almost like if they don't know any better. So I think, yeah. But I think when it comes to animals and everything, I think everyone should volunteer. Everyone should try and adopt instead of buying a dog. Shame. No, because I see so many people and they go, oh, I want a tiny little this, and this. I'm like, no, but there are tiny little this, and this everywhere. And another issue that actually is coming up now is the fact that they get these dogs and then they post them.
Well, this is a problem. I don't know. So I think sometimes those things that we think are a Saigon problem or a Vietnam problem. So, for example, like picking up dog shit. But then you go back home and you're like, people don't pick up dog shit here either. There's dog shit everywhere. It's like a worldwide problem. It's not a Vietnam problem. You see some people in the expat groups will be like, oh, why do people do this here? And you're like, it's not. They do it back home as well. Don't pretend that it's different here. But I think, so I don't know if this might happen in other countries as well. I'm not sure because I'm not from there. But here, I don't know how often it happens, but it does happen every now and again that someone will post on a pet lovers group or an expat group saying that they'd just gotten a dog and now they need to give it up for different reasons. Sometimes I've seen them say, oh, suddenly my building has banned dogs. And then people will be like, well, you need to move house. Sometimes it's sad, whether it's true or not, they'll say, oh, I've just had a child for the first time and suddenly the dog's really aggressive and doesn't get on with the child, so we need to rehome him. There are legitimate reasons why you might need to rehome a dog, but it does seem to happen too often sometimes, and I think sometimes people aren't prepared for a dog, but I think that probably happens back home as well.
Oh, definitely. They always say a thing about, oh, for Christmas they'll pick up a dog and then, for a holiday or whatever, and then they end up in the shelter. Here, I think it's been a lot, because again, I think it's they don't understand the responsibility they're taking on. Yeah, as a puppy, they're cute, but I'm like, they're going to destroy, they're going to bite you, they're going to bite each other, they're going to destroy things, they will pee everywhere, they're going to bark, but you have to, so that...
My mum got a puppy and it could fit like on the palm of her hand and it ended up being the size of a small horse. Like, you also sometimes don't realize how big, especially if you're getting a rescue and you don't know like what breed it is. They didn't really know much about the dog's background and suddenly they had this massive dog.
So for me, for example, I've always been like, again, like I've never understood. And again, I actually was put in that situation because actually a couple months ago we had to post to give one of our dogs up, Sadie. So if anyone is interested in a dog, No, so again, we tried everything. When I say everything, so we rescued her. She was from a meat market. When she came in, she looked like a little lump of. So what they do here is this is very horrible. So there's a trigger warning. Before they kill them, they put boiling water on them to shave them. So she had no hair.
Haven't heard that one before. I'd heard that they beat them before they
Yeah, so
because it makes the meat more tender.
yeah, I think
apparently.
adrenaline makes the meat more
Yeah,
tender,
that's what I'd
but they also
heard.
burn off the hair
I hadn't heard
yeah.
that one. Oh my God.
So she was this tiny little lump, really funny looking, and then she grew up and same thing. We didn't know if she was gonna and now she looks like a tiny hyena. She eyes that look like they're different sizes. Funny little girl, and was amazing for the longest time with our oldest dog Nala. Everything was fine. And then small things started to happen. Of course, dogs, females, it's going to happen. And we knew it was going to happen. So we had Ali from Dog Walkers try and come. And of course, I think it was a lot of us. We were probably the problem because we were so nervous.
Oh, we had
them.
dog training with Biscuit and it was just training us, not
Yeah.
really Biscuit at all. And she changed instantly as soon as we changed our behavior.
So for us, we had that and we had a couple incidents and she bit me and have stitches everywhere. And everyone said, like, we didn't need to give up. I was like, I don't care if my dog takes my arm off. If I can fix her, and I'm keeping her, and then we got a new puppy because I went to rescue a dog actually right out here that was ran from a meat market, a beautiful Fukuoka puppy. It was kept in a chicken cage and, covered in mange and ticks and worms and everything and beaten. And so when she came home with us, it became a pack. So then Sadie did not like that. So then Sadie turned around and started biting everyone in the house, all the time. So it was an everyday thing. But we still did everything. We had dog training. We put her to a friend's house. So now we just have her at our house and we just pay them to just keep her until we can find someone. Because it's the same thing. I don't want to give her up. I refuse to give her up. I wrote this post on Dog Lovers and it took me forever because I was just crying as I'm doing it because I'm giving up my baby. But this is the thing I said with a lot of people is that there are so many other ways. Like, oh, the dog's not getting along. Well, try training, and of course, yeah, you have a child. It's not that's an okay reason, or you're allergic. But there's so many people who I do see they get a dog and then they don't realize the responsibility comes, or that the fact that they will bite everything. They're not going to always be cute, and they're not always going to behave. And again, they need training. You need to walk them, so. But yeah, so when we see these little shops in Taudien that sell dogs in a little glass thing,
well, I just noticed
I'm
that
not
this
gonna
week.
I'm not gonna lie. I go in there a lot because I just want to go in and like look at them, and I hold every single one because
Those are quite new though, right? Because we just saw one last week, and I was like, I'd never seen this before. Was exactly what you're saying, like because that's not common in Vietnam. I think again, maybe back home, it's common to have a pet shop like that.
So I've actually seen them.
You need to let me finish. So it's not that maybe it's common back home to have a pet shop with windows. I think it is common, right? I can't remember. It's been so long, but it's not normal here in Vietnam. And now I've noticed in Tao Dien there's a couple of pet shops sprung up where you can go and look in the window and even go in and pick them up if you want.
So I've seen them pop up everywhere now around Tao Dien. I think like three of them at least in Tao Dien. And again, I go in and I do say, like, again, I'm a sucker for any dog. So even though I don't support that kind of, but I still go in every time we walk by. I'm forced even to stop in so I can hold every single dog. But the prices are insane for these dogs. I really say Italian Greyhound was 100 million for an Italian Greyhound, which is insane. But yeah, but they come with paperwork and whatever. But apparently, I also read somewhere that those dogs are not really healthy either. They come with good paperwork. But that paperwork comes from a vet that works for the shop. But yeah, so I do say adopt, don't shop. But I also understand people that have a certain need of a certain. Like, I would love a Great Dane. That's my dream dog, a Great Dane.
I wanted a Greyhound actually originally. And it's so funny because, Greyhounds are so long and beautiful and skinny. And Adri said to me, she went, if we get a Greyhound, it's going to look like you. You don't want a dog that looks like you. And I was like, fucking hell, that's so true. It'd be one of those people walking down the road with my long, slender, slim Greyhound, and people would be like, oh, he looks just like the owner. I was like, no, I don't want that. So Biscuit, being a French Bulldog, hopefully doesn't look anything like me at all.
Don't they always say that the dogs normally tend to start looking like their owners or behave, even mannerisms of the dog?
I've heard things like that before.
So I got Nala 6 years ago because I'm a very anxious person and I needed someone, I got her for my anxiety, only for her to have worse anxiety than I have, and I'm her support animal now. And And my boyfriend always goes like, because they're very clingy, but I love a clingy dog. I'm like, I don't want a dog that just like looks at me and walk. No, I need you to need me. So all the dogs that come into our house become babies. Like if I would carry them in a little swaddle if I could. The puppy is 20 kilos now, so I can't swaddle. But I try to still. She's actually going bald on one side of her head because I'm constantly kissing her, and she sleeps like this on me. So I'm constantly so she's actually going bald on one side of her head.
Well, on that note, I think we need to let Biscuit out because she's still pawing at the door. Thank you so much for coming on a Vietnam podcast, sharing your story. Last question, do you feel Swedish, Finnish, Vietnamese, what do you affiliate with the most?
It depends on the day. Depends on the day. Sometimes I sit at home and I make my meatballs in lingonberry jam and I feel very, very Swedish. Or midsummer, I feel very Swedish. But then, and then I'm also at the same time cooking pho at home and then I feel very Vietnamese. So it depends on the day. Depends on who's asking. I'll code switch to whoever.
How do you feel today?
I don't know. I haven't eaten anything yet today, so we'll see. We're gonna see.
And let's see when you go home if you've picked up the Scottish accent.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see if it's like going, I'm born and bred. I actually used to live with a Scottish girl, and she taught me to say I'm born and bred in
That's
Fife.
pretty good.
In Fife.
That's a good one. Well, thank you for tuning in. Remember, share this episode with somebody who also loves Vietnam, who wants to learn more about the culture here. And make sure you go to Facebook, Instagram, follow a Vietnam podcast. And also rate, review, subscribe, turn on notifications, do all that good stuff. And if you want to join our community, go to a Vietnam podcast. Go to patreon.com/a Vietnam podcast. You'll get episodes like this before anyone else. You'll get invites to special events. I'm in the middle of planning a cocktail crawl. So a podcast cocktail crawl, which by the time you see this episode might have already happened. So make sure though you do join on patreon.com/a Vietnam podcast and become a bop sao dear. So Linda, thank you very much for coming on a Vietnam podcast and sharing your story with everyone.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Biscuit, we're going to let you out now. Cheers.